June 26th in Mississippi would bring temperatures and humidity into the 90s. A breeze out of the southwest would barely move the state flag enough to see that Confederate battle symbol still displayed in its upper left corner. At 4 a.m. on this Sunday morning, most of Mississippi was still asleep. But for a group of teenagers, white teenagers barreling west on Interstate 20, a mission was already underway. They were headed to Jackson because in their segregated world, Jackson is where the black people live.
They were looking for black people. They were looking for a black person to assault.
Mississippi's Hinds County District Attorney Robert Schuler Smith says evidence shows those white Mississippi teens had just one thing in mind.
They discussed, let's go get, let's be honest here, let's go get a nigger, right?
That's exactly what it will show.
It was still dark when James Craig Anderson walked out of a motel towards his car in a parking lot off Jackson's Ellis Avenue. Smith says that's when the white teenagers saw him, James, a black man, alone. It is hard to imagine what happened next without using the term hate. The teenagers from mostly white Rankin County were being led by an 18-year-old named Darrell Dedman, according to police. Dedman had a history of harassing teens at his high school. By several accounts from parents and students who knew him, he hated blacks, hated white people who had black friends. He hated anyone he thought was gay. And on this Sunday morning, after a night of drinking, he and his friends, witnesses have told police, were out to act on that hate. Some of the teens there that night would tell police the teenagers attacked that lone black man without any provocation, repeatedly beating Anderson, yelling, "White power." Then one of the vehicles drives off. Darrell Dedman apparently wasn't through. He had two girls in his truck as he was leaving this parking lot, a big F-250 pickup truck. James Craig Anderson, the man who was beaten almost to a pulp, was stumbling down this curb. That's when police say Darrell Dedman hit the gas, jumped the curb, and ran right over his victim, smashing him. What he didn't know was the entire episode was being caught on a surveillance camera on the corner of this hotel. This is what was caught on that tape, obtained exclusively by CNN, and we warn you, it is disturbing. James Craig Anderson first comes into view in the lower right corner of the screen after he was beaten, according to police. He staggers into the headlights of Mr. Dedman's truck, his white shirt easily visible. Then the truck backs up, surges forward, the headlights glowing brightly on Anderson's shirt before he and that shirt disappear underneath it. The truck runs right over the defenseless man.
After he does that, he drives to a McDonald's. He picks up the phone, apparently calls a buddy and says, what?
According to the testimony, I ran that nigger over.
Witnesses say he almost was bragging about it, that he was laughing about it, really.
That's what we plan to present.
Darrell Dedman has pled not guilty. His attorney has refused to answer CNN's many calls for comment, though during one court appearance, that attorney said he didn't see any evidence racism was involved. The district attorney says nothing else was involved. He has classified this as capital murder and a hate crime. You would think it would be a wake-up call for any town where that kind of hate could fester. But this is Brandon, Mississippi. Think again.
It's just an unfortunate incident. It happened, but once it happened, we haven't gone into, code red, oh my God, we've got a, major problem. Let's stop traffic and everybody needs to go home and lock their doors and, we just kind of just keep going, doing what we do.
Here, where a Confederate war memorial stands at the center of town, the police say there were no warning signs. But we found the police are wrong. CNN has learned investigators are now looking into allegations Darrell Dedmon and his friends had a pattern of racism and violence.
How did they get away with this?
They just never got in trouble. Like, they would be told on, and the cops wouldn't do anything to them. They'd let them go.
School officials ever intervene?
No. Let them go.
Coming up, did a town's indifference help lead to murder? The death of James Craig Anderson was like the dark Mississippi past come back to life. Prosecutor Robert Smith had only heard the tales of racial hatred from his grandfather, who helped and even housed civil rights leaders like Medgar Evers and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was before Smith was even born, back in the 60s, when both men were shot down in a terrible wave of racial violence. On June 26th, that ugly past was suddenly present.
When you first saw the video, the surveillance video, what was your reaction?
Certainly breathtaking, unbelievable. Thought about the fact that that could have been anyone, including myself.
The district attorney has charged Darrell Dedmon, the teen driving the truck that killed Anderson, with capital murder. A second teen, John Rice, has been charged with simple assault. 5 other white teenagers who were there have not been charged. Anderson's family has kept their grief and frustration mostly private. But after a court hearing, Anderson's sister could not contain her emotions.
Go to Brandon, Mississippi. Go to Brandon, Mississippi, and get those other 5 murderers who committed such an horrendous, violent act against my beloved brother, James Craig Anderson.
You have to drive east to get to Brandon, across the Pearl River, the invisible line that seems to separate black Mississippi from white. And while in Jackson, Anderson's killing has prompted marches and a call for healing. In Brandon, the reaction has been mostly silent. Brandon police wouldn't even return CNN's phone calls.
Is the chief in?
It was an assistant police chief who finally came out to say there was no story here.
Aren't you concerned that a lot of these kids are from Rankin County? Not just 1 or 2, but there were 7 of them who drove over there and took
You're
part
right.
in this.
And I can't, you're going to have a couple of bad seeds. One guy ran over the individual, not all 6. So, I can't, I hate that it happened, and I wish to God it didn't happen here or anywhere. But as far as it being, we have a national problem. We don't have any more problem than any other city. It's just an isolated incident, and you can quote me on that.
But it didn't take us long to find out it wasn't an isolated incident. Darrell Dedmon has a criminal history, arrested and convicted of harassment earlier this year. 2 years ago, this local pastor says he had to call police when his son was being harassed.
And I had told Jordan for a year and a half that Darrell Dedmon will kill you.
He had a look of no conscience. He was blank stare. Darrell always, I think, just carried around this backpack of hatred.
Other students also told us they were bullied or beaten by Dedmon and his friends, who called people nigger lovers if they befriended blacks. We were told school administrators mostly looked the other way as bullying and racial hatred festered. School officials declined our interview request, but a spokesperson told CNN they take bullying seriously and that they had no record of any trouble from Darrell Dedmon. Students told us Dedmon and his friends were a problem, using racial slurs, calling blacks, and even President Obama the N-word. Ken Johnson used to manage a gas station where Dedmon and his friends used to hang out.
It seems like that every word that came out of their mouth was the N-word. And that they're taking over, as if it was some kind of war.
Dedmon's family has refused to talk to CNN. So has his attorney. This man did. Once close to Dedmon and his friends, he now fears them.
I believe that every one of these kids that are occurred in the incident are dangerous and are capable of many things, and I just don't want my image to be seen because I'm really worried about it.
This man told us there were other violent and racial incidents with Dedmon and other friends of his.
Did they ever go looking for black people? Hunting, literally?
Yes, they're known as the like I said, the Brandon boys, but they're also known as the racist kids, the white group.
CNN has learned federal investigators from the Department of Justice have uncovered 2 other possible incidents where groups of white Rankin County teens, including Dedmon, have sought out and attacked a black person.
Have you guys been concerned about these guys? Not at all?
Nope.
This man says racism is behind Brandon, Mississippi's silence.
Do you believe there's a lot of people in Brandon, Mississippi that may feel the same way about the killing of a black man?
Yes. Yes. I've even heard it out of some of the police officers' mouths. That this is their statement. Well, Darrell was a good kid. He just made one bad mistake.